It was a dark day. It was a dangerous crime spree. There was that glaring double standard in the response by law enforcement, who were also outnumbered and surprised because then President Trump took extreme culpable measures to keep his plans a surprise, that alone endangering many police officers, among others. That's now criminal evidence against Mr. Trump. We'll come back to that. But as you saw in that archival footage from that terrible day, some of the crimes that played out in real time were straightforward. Trespassing, entering with a weapon. Over 900 people indicted, half convicted already, often on those type of charges. Straightforward cases. You see trespassing, you charge trespassing. You see battery, you charge battery. And there was a lot of videotape. But others are not legally obvious, which I'm going to go through with you right now. In casual English, people throw around words like treason or sedition or traitors. In law, those are actually quite precise charges defined through precedent. And they're hard to prove in court. Consider that until this year, the DOJ had not won any sedition case since all the way back in 1995. Hadn't even tried to win one in over a decade. And the reason is, again, under law, not just calling someone a traitor, but proving sedition has extra requirements even beyond the horrific violence you might see or attacking a police officer or attacking a government building. It's not enough, for example, to attack one government building. The crime requires that someone is actually trying to overthrow the entire government itself or violently hindering a law of the U.S. So for January 6th, sedition means proving that attackers, for example, communicated leading up to the siege and intended to subvert democracy. And we should remember, because we live in a culture now where people love to say, oh, didn't we know that? Or, okay, that's standard. It's almost, in some circles, considered like you're smart or cool to talk that way. But 2 years ago, going into this, none of this was obvious. I just showed you how rare these cases were, and some at the DOJ were nervous about any theory of the case that tried to prove full-blown, premeditated sedition based on what happened in the storming of the Capitol on the 6th. And let me tell you why. There was another right-wing attack plot that was pointed at the government, but it failed when the DOJ tried to bring a sedition case. It was the Obama-era DOJ that actually, and this is quite important, they lost a rare attempt at filing a sedition prosecution against a militia out in Michigan.
The allegations were so frightening, really. The government said that the Hutari militia was plotting to overthrow the government. And they said that the militia was going to kill a police officer, bomb the police officer's funeral. Federal Judge Victoria Roberts said there wasn't enough evidence to show that there was a concrete, firm plan, that it was anything more than just tough talk.
The legal lesson there was clear. It's one thing for prosecutors to proclaim sedition, file the big charge, get the headlines, get all the attention and scrutiny. It's another thing to win a sedition case, even against people like that who are not sympathetic. They were caught discussing and vowing that they were going to murder a police officer and then bomb the funeral of a police officer. Not sympathetic. But again, I'm not talking about whether your plans sound nice. I'm talking about whether it rises to the legally required level that you are actually trying to not just hurt people in government, which is bad and a separate crime, but use that plotting or attack to overthrow our government itself. And let me show you specifically, the judge in that case I'm reminding you about found that the serious crime of a conspiracy to murder law enforcement was still a far cry from actually overthrowing the government. So these sedition cases, which can hit convicts with 20 years in prison on top of whatever other crimes they might be convicted of, are a huge deal, rarely pursued. And that is the factual context for the Garland DOJ deciding to go at him, throw the book at him, aggressive, sedition. And that means the DOJ says it has the evidence that this was all more than violence, more than plots like I showed you in Michigan, that it was extensively coordinated, that it was a Trump-boosting plot against the entire U.S. government because it was the violent muscle of the coup to overthrow the lawful election with planning and prep and strategy and the DOJ having hard evidence on tape.
The Proud Boys established a command structure in anticipation of coming back to D.C. on January 6th.
You better get your to D.C., folks, this Saturday.
Yeah, if you don't, there'll be no more republics, or we wind up in a bloody fight. We all know that.
The Oath Keepers set up quick reaction forces outside of the city in Virginia where they stored arms.
What it was going to be was an armed revolution.
The night of January 5th, Enrique Tarrio and Stuart Rhodes met in a parking garage in Washington, D.C.
Stuart, pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine.
The Oath Keepers went into the Capitol through the east doors in two stack formations.
The Proud Boys instigated the first breach of the Capitol just before 1:00 p.m.
Mr. Tarrio said in an encrypted chat, "Make no mistake, and we did this."
You may hear the audio there is from one of the ways that America had this presented through those very newsworthy January 6th committee hearings, but the source was a DOJ indictment. The encrypted text there, that was a time when the DOJ's evidence was at issue, not the committee. That quote, "We did this," an ugly confession in past tense by someone who wants to take away your democracy and who would hurt you unless you're on board with the Trump coup. Well, there is a modicum of a legal process and justice in this country. That is now damning evidence at that very militia leader's trial, which is happening this week. Big news, big story. Attorney General Garland and some legal experts now have moved the needle. They've won those other sedition cases, and they view sedition, when you look at January 6th, as part of the baseline for legal accountability. We're 2 years out from that attack, but the seditionists are now facing this process, judged by a jury of their peers, and many are facing prison. 4 of those Oath Keeper leaders convicted of sedition just this week. That's the second such conviction for members of that group after its top leader, Stuart Rhodes, was convicted on the same charge last month. He awaits sentencing and could face up to 60 years in prison, which would put him on a path to spend the rest of his life in prison, to die incarcerated for his efforts to criminally overthrow your government on behalf of Donald Trump, who summoned so many people like him to Washington. So these verdicts can set precedent for sending other violent Trump fans to prison. They can help coup-proof our democracy if there is all of this real accountability, because others may think twice about what happens if you go spend the next time, the next January 6th. There will be future January 6th, because this is a process. But do you want to give up the rest of your life on earth and your liberty for that one day? The other cases are ongoing. The former leader of the other right-wing militia group I showed you, of the Proud Boys, is on trial for this sedition case, for allegedly plotting to use force to keep then-President Trump in office illegally. Also, in his case, facing up to 20 years in prison. These are serious, serious sentences. Now, those are 3 separate cases against individuals who belong to extremist groups who physically stormed the Capitol. Now, this is the most important part, and let me tell you, both things can be true. The DOJ can be very aggressive in one place and still have a lot of open questions about the higher-level people who weren't present that day. And this is vital. We have seen evidence, multiple indications, that there was contacts, that there was awareness, that there were people on the Trump team who had a very clear idea about storming the Capitol, and even the violence and armed members, militias included, of that criminal plot. Allies of Trump, supporters of Trump.
I overheard the president say something to the effect of, you know, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here.
Video from the day of the siege showing Roger Stone, a confidant of former President Donald Trump, flanked by men wearing insignias of a militia group.
Take the effing mags away. Let my people in.
Who would you like me to condemn?
Proud Boys and
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
They're not here to hurt me. They can march to the Capitol from here.
They were not here to hurt him. They were there to hurt the honorable members of the police. They were there to hurt members of Congress. They were there to hurt the vice president. They wanted to assassinate Trump's vice president. They made that clear. And Trump told the militias to stand by in advance. And he summoned people to D.C. And he hid his plan to send those armed people to the Capitol. And warned they were armed, he sent the armed people to the Capitol. And he tried to join them. And he defended them during and after. And he has since vowed pardons for them. And some of them are now convicted seditionists. Others on trial this week, and we will report out how they fare in the legal process. It was legally and historically bold for the DOJ to pursue these crimes as formal legal sedition cases. And so far, the DOJ prosecutors are winning those cases. Everything I just said in the last moment about Donald Trump are just facts supported by evidence. They're not opinions. They're not personal attacks on him. But they are facts the country has to weigh as he currently tries to return to the White House. And the next question is whether anyone who was not on site that day will face even a sliver of accountability as compared to the seditionists, even on a lesser charge. We know those people who are now convicted seditionists. They didn't come up with the plot alone. They didn't choose January 6th. They weren't constitutional law experts. They didn't know about the Trump plots until Trump aides and allies pushed them out in public and got everyone there. And so while there is a lot going on that sometimes doesn't make the news, these trials are significant. I showed you how rare they are. There is an open question about what this leads to and whether there will be full accountability.